All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Batting 1,000, where we talk with the heavy hitters in the mortgage and real estate business. And I have got an incredible interview for you guys today. I'm so excited about this one. We are blessed to have Michelle Berman-Mikel with us. And if you don't know who Michelle is, let me tell you a little bit about her background. She is the founder and CEO of Berman Media PD. She is a nationally recognized keynote speaker. She has spoke to thousands upon thousands of mortgage and real estate professionals. She's the host of the Coffee and Questions podcast, which is really awesome. You got to check it out. She's also the creator of Beyond the Method. And we're going to talk about this a lot today. This is a system that she has created for turning social media into a prospecting tool. And that's going to be the basis of our conversation today. Is she is going to just drop tons of golden nuggets on how you can utilize your social media the right way in today's market. Look, Michelle has helped thousands of mortgage professionals to understand the psychology behind connection and how to create conversations that convert. We're going to talk about that right out of the gate. She also focuses on building credibility and relationships instead of chasing trends versus vanity metrics. And if you don't know what vanity metrics are, we'll have that discussion. But I think the most interesting thing from my perspective is that she was a D1 swimmer at Rutgers University from 2008 to 2012. Which shows her discipline and her endurance in both business and in life. And she's author of the new book, The Black Line. And you will want to get a copy of this. It is the secret to making your lane your superpower. Michelle, welcome to Batting 1,000. We are delighted to have you.
Oh my goodness. Thank you, Dale. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, let's start out. I want to begin with the parallel between your college swimming expertise. You did the mile, and that's a long distance in the water when you're basically sprinting for a mile in the water. I couldn't do 100 yards, so I'm glad you can do that. So there's some endurance involved in that. And how does that correlate and pair up with social media, the mortgage market, how people should be interacting with that? I know there's a lot of commonalities there. Let's begin there, and then I want to get into talking about your book and Beyond the Measure and all, or the method, and all the things that you guys are doing.
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack, so we'll do our best to try to make sure that we can get through all the bits and pieces. And feel free to interrupt me if you want along the way through it. But the analogy, right, of the black line initially came from that life in the pool, and I always kind of start by talking about my 20 plus year swimming career. I actually started swimming competitively at 5.
Wow.
And started swimming the mile at 13, which is the youngest you're allowed to be before you can swim the mile in a swim meet or, at an event competitively. So at 13, I was kind of thrown into the world of the mile, and it was very quickly apparent that I was not a sprinter. I did not have the fast twitch muscles. I was not a relay athlete. I was a long distance endurance athlete, meaning I could just go for a really long time and seemingly didn't slow down, right? Which is typically a problem for endurance sports, right? That's why a lot of people are not that. So at 13, I started swimming the mile regularly, which meant that I was training about 10 to 11,000 yards / meters, depending on the time of year, a day. And I grew up swimming in Southern California with a club program called FAST, F-A-S-T, Fullerton Aquatic Sports Team, which is the current Janet Evans Swim Complex. So any swimmers, you know who Janet Evans is. She is the queen of endurance athletics, second only to Katie Ledecky, who has taken most of, if not all of her records thus far.
Yeah, she's amazing. She's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, truly. And I grew up swimming in Janet Evans' pool, right? Like in Fullerton.
Wow.
And it was one of those things, I think, Dale, I'll say, I learned and knew about the word, or what I guess the action of discipline, long before I even knew what the word meant, right? Because I was just living it every day, and I didn't have any other way of operating. And so fast forward to today, where the symbolism or sort of the parallels come is, and I'll tell you a story. I think it's the best way to start it. In 2019, I launched Beyond the Method, which is the name of the course that I created. And the initial launch was a massive failure. And I say that very authentically. It was incredibly difficult to have put 3 to 4 years of time and energy and love into building a following, which I started my social following game, if you will, in 2014. So it had been roughly 5 years of growing a following, building a base, creating killer content, or so I thought, right, in my mind, and doing as much as I could to create a platform that when I turned this bad boy on, it would just crush it. And I remember telling my husband, so it was the Thursday and we were launching Monday. We were turning it on Monday. So this Thursday happens. I'm like, all right, babe, I got to sit in my office and record these 65 videos that make up this course because that part's not done yet. So I sat in my office and literally recorded 65 videos between Thursday and Sunday. And then Monday morning, it was planned for 9 a.m. We were going to turn that thing on. And I, that morning, remember telling Dave, I was like, babe, you got to pick where we're going out to dinner because we're going somewhere fun to celebrate this, you know, thinking I was going to just like crush it out of the gate. And we didn't sell anything Monday. We didn't sell anything Tuesday. We didn't sell anything on Wednesday. And it wasn't until that Friday that we finally sold something. And it was only because I gave the guy 20% off. And I genuinely think that's the only reason why he said yes.
Yeah.
And I remember running into my living room, just like screaming, crying, happy, like, oh my gosh, we did it. We got the first one. You know, they say the first one's always the hardest. So the initial launch was devastating, right? I mean, 5 years of time and you're just like, why didn't this work? So after a couple of weeks of reflection, I realized that over the last several years, I had been trying to swim a race that was not mine to swim, right? Meaning I had been trying to swim the sprints or the 50-meter freestyle is how I describe it when I present this. The 50 free is a fast, flashy event, you know, right? It's 20 to 23 seconds max, depending on what level of college you're swimming for, or, you know, even younger kids these days are swimming sub 20s, which is just wild. But the average mile takes roughly 17 minutes. So think about that for a second, right? You have a 17-minute race versus a 20 to 23 second race.
That's
They're
crazy.
not the same, right? No. So for 5 years leading up to the launch, I had been trying to swim, little to my knowledge, right? I'd been trying to swim someone else's race. Trying to pay attention to things that didn't matter. How many followers I had didn't matter. How many likes I was getting on content didn't matter, didn't correlate, right? How many video views I was getting on things didn't matter, wasn't making any difference. How viral my hook was didn't matter. What mattered ultimately come to my, you know, reflection time, or came to me in my reflection time, which was I love people and I'm so good at building relationships, but I was not taking the time to make them with the people that I was starting to generate eyeballs from. So they were consuming my content, but they were in relation with me. Therefore, when I tried to go sell them something, I was just one of 100 people that they could have bought it from. So the failure was my feedback. It was a massive redirect and ultimately brought me back to my roots, right? Who is Michelle and who was I born to be? And it certainly was not a 50-meter freestyler.
I love that story. So there's so many things you just said that I want to unpack that are really important, because there's so many parallels here. You know, in the many years that I've coached loan officers and trained companies, and 30 years of training millions of loan officers across the nation, the one thing that I have stood very firm on from day one, and it's no different when I started in 1983 as a loan officer to today, 42 years later, where I'm coaching teams. This business is about relationship. It is about engaging, connecting, building trust, building loyalty. And social media to me is no different. And the thing that most intrigued me about you being on the show today is I kind of read through your stuff, and Jay kind of, you know, brought me up to speed on who you were. I'm like, wow, I love her mindset and philosophy, because I feel like the only guy in the industry out there who says, quit worrying about your likes, quit worrying about your follows, and start worrying about your connection. Mm-hmm. The interesting thing is, and this is a really fun thing, one of the things that I talk about all the time when I'm training loan officers is I'll talk about the key to conversion is to have a conversation. And the interesting thing about that is that the word conversation has the word conversion embedded in it. It is conversion with an A and a T plugged in the middle. And the A and the T, from my vantage point, stands for allow time. Allow time to build enough relationship to be able to have a conversation so you convert. Now, what I want to hear from you, and what the audience will truly benefit from, now that you've mentioned this whole point about the importance of connection, talk to me and talk to the audience about how do you really maximize, because this is what Beyond the Method is all about. It's not about the typical traditional, what you see a lot out there of is get as many followers, get as many people, be in as many places, put all this content. And I see loan officers doing this and they're failing miserably. And I keep saying, no, you're doing it the wrong approach. You got to slow down, back up, and you got to connect with your audience in a very personal, real way that's measurable. Talk to us about strategies, your mindset, your philosophy when it comes to how do you become successful and effective in a social media environment today as a mortgage professional or a real estate professional?
Well, just such a great question. And I share the sentiment. I mean, I've been in audiences and Jake and I, who I know is not here with us right now, but Jake and I have talked offline about this, how many times we've been at events recently, even in just the last few months, where there are people that are on stage that are preaching the wrong things, right? Yep. And I hate to say that, but I'm not afraid to say it, right? Because I'm in the audience listening and I'm thinking like, what are you selling these people? Like you're teaching them to worry about something that doesn't matter. So I'll break it down to you as simply as humanly possible, Dale, and tell you my philosophy is to send one message every single day to somebody that you don't know using my favorite word in the English dictionary, which is leverage. And leverage by Webster definition, I have no idea. By Michelle Berman-Mikel's definition is building a bridge between someone I have a relationship with to get to somebody that I don't. I have and had several other individuals that have mentioned Jake to me. I built a relationship with Jake and I said, hey, Jake, I'd love to meet your dad. That is how we're here, right? So, but you create and invest. I mean, if you look back at the person who introduced me to Jake in the first place, which is where that initial conversation even started, that individual, it was probably 2 years of building a relationship with that person before I even name dropped them to build a relationship with Jake. And if you look at the time that has passed between the first conversation with Jake to when you and I are here today, Dale, 6 to 8 months at least.
Wow.
Right. And if you think about that, that is not I'm just going to send this random guy a message and hope he says yes to me. It's a very methodical and very strategic plan that is truly rooted in I genuinely care about these human beings, because if I don't, they will know. Right. I recorded a video yesterday about AI, and 52% of people say that they cannot differentiate between an AI response or a human response on social. That is a huge problem to me. But to get back to the granular side of it, what I do and how I've built my entire career and my entire business and earned just about every opportunity I've ever gotten is I have sent one message every single day without fail to someone that I do not know using leverage in it. Right. I teach that 4-part framework in the book. It is on page 132 and 133. Go steal it. Use it because it freaking works. Right. But I think the most important thing is it's lived experience, right? It's every time I do it, I will ask the person, hey, just out of curiosity, I'm sure you get a ton of messages every day. Why'd you respond to mine? And I ask that question on purpose because I want to know, is it landing and did it resonate with them and did it stand out from the white noise? So I think the mortgage world, the real estate world, really just anyone in sales and marketing of any kind, any entrepreneur needs to understand that if you're sending a message right now, we live in a world that is so AI driven at the moment that your message must stand out. Because, Dale, how many messages have you gotten on LinkedIn today?
Oh,
right. So many. And it's so annoying to me because every time I open them, right? But every time I open them, I'm like, I say two things. One, that was probably not for me. Two, they didn't use my name. And three, out of curiosity, like, oh, how many did they copy and paste that message to? Because they probably sent it to hundreds. So the outbound prospecting philosophy is really rooted in a focal point, staying in our lane, knowing what we're good at, which is sending messages to people that we like and that we want to get to know, and having an anchor point. So the black line itself visually is an anchor or a focal point of the world is naturally distracting, right? You got all of these people telling you to go do this thing, all these people over here telling you to go do this thing. You're on social and you're scrolling and you're like, oh, that's a good idea. hey, Dale did a video about that. I guess I'll do it too. Stop. Like, stop doing that. Right?
Yep.
Because my lane is not your lane, which is not John Doe's lane. Like, we need to be in our own space and we need to own it. And I think, sending one message a day, I think it's so interesting because people are like, Michelle, there's got to be more to it. That just sounds way too simple. I'm like, there's not more to it. It is truly that simple. And if you do it consistently, it's a compound. We've all probably read The Compound Effect, the book. It's a phenomenal book. Yep. That's what it is. If you do it consistently over a long, sustained period of time, and you wonder why, oh, wow, I just woke up and looking at my calendar for January, and I'm 24 weeks pregnant the day that we're recording this. I'm going to be really pregnant at all three of those events in January. But the exciting thing about that is that all three of those events were booked several months ago, right? And so you start to look at your calendar and you're like, oh, it's weird. It's working, right? Yep. Over a long period of time.
Yep.
So hopefully that answers that. But the prospecting strategy, again, is just so wildly simple, but our brains overcomplicate it. And we say, there's got to be more to it. Why is there not? Like, give me the real reason or give me the real answer. And I'm like, that is the real answer. Just do that one thing. And it becomes a repeatable, structured system that we can always fall back on and always count on to get us to the next step or whatever the next level is that we want. And ultimately a booked calendar.
Yep. Well, it's interesting because I've said forever that repetition is the mother of all success. And I believe that's absolutely true. When we do things repeatedly, they become consistent, they become uniform, and they become outstanding if you're doing the right things. So that's the key to the game. So I want to go a little bit deeper on this because I love your mindset. It's so different than what I see out there a lot with, I go to so many conferences because I speak all the time all over the nation. And I sit in some of these sessions when there's people talking on social media or talking on these kinds of topics. And what I hear a lot of is what I call the spray and pray approach. Let's just get everything out there we can, get our name in as many places as possible, and then pray and hope that something good's going to happen. And it generally doesn't. Your approach is a very targeted approach. It's a very measured approach. It's a very strategic approach, which is really in line with how I've always believed is the key to success in business. You got to be tactical. You got to be strategic. You've got to be intentional. Those are the things that have to happen all the time. So let's get a little bit more granular. When you talk about this 4-step process that you use for prospecting, give us an example. You're leveraging a relationship with one person to get to another. What does that look like in the messaging? What is the consistency and how often you're contacting them? And I don't want you to give away everything in your book, but we're going to tell everybody to buy your book anyway and read it because they should. So thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to start by saying something that I really love saying, and I don't say it enough, so I feel like this is a great time to reiterate it. Success does not come from intensity, right? It does not come from, I'm going to wake up and I'm just having this, like I got 2.5 hours of REM sleep, so I'm just productive as crazy and I'm going to do everything today, right? Like, that is not where success comes from. Success comes from, you use the word consistency. I love that word. I think it's super pertinent to what we're talking about. So success comes from consistency. And a lot of the times in my life, I'm sure in yours too, it's when nobody's watching, nobody's cheering for us. Nobody's in my office. I have a 4-year-old and I wake up at about 4:20 every morning to come up. My husband and I read the Bible, and then I read about 10 to 15 pages of a personal book. And then I'm in front of my computer by 5. And from 5 until 6:30, when my son is awake, I'm in work mode. And what's crazy is now that I'm a parent, right? My son is 4. I've been a parent for a while, but now that I'm in this stage of my life, what I can get done between 5 and 6:30 is like a former 6-hour day for me. Yeah, like right. I can get so much done because I have such a specific direction of what I'm trying to do. So if we back up to your question on the 4-part framework and what this looks like for a message, I'll put it really simply. The first thing that needs to come out of your mouth needs to not be about you. It needs to be about them. Right. And I think that is so key because on social, think about it from a perception piece. On social, you can see the preview of a message that someone has sent you prior to opening it. So those first, 7-8 words, if it says anything about a call, if it says anything about I want to pick your brain, if it says anything about, hey, are you available? I'm out.
Yep.
Like I'm not even opening it.
Yep.
And you could have just written me the world's best message. I'm out.
Yep.
Right? Because it's not about you. You sending that message should be about me and why you want to be in connection with me.
Yep.
So if I'm sending you a message, it might sound something like, hey, Dale, I actually was just on a call with, and they mentioned you and they said that they were doing X, Y, or Z, or that they said they saw you do this at this event. Right. So it's about you. And I'm adding and saying, Dale, I'm sort of honoring you in that moment.
Nice.
And then I get to use leverage at the same time, because by honoring you, I'm also using leverage. Right. So I'm saying, hey, Dale, I was on a call with Jake last week. You love Jake. Not only is he your son, but he's really good at what he does. Right.
Yeah, yes.
So you're like, oh, Michelle knows Jake. Well, I love Jake. So Jake has credibility, which then in turn, by default, because I have a relationship with Jake, builds credibility or ethos for me. Right. So the first thing is, it's not about me. It's about you. And I have to use leverage in it, in that initial piece. And then there's a couple other pieces to it. I won't give away all the secret sauce, but one of them is FOMO, which is fear of missing out, right? Yep. So what do you want to say in that 4-part framework, which it really is at sentence 3, that is FOMO related, meaning you, Dale, will almost be like, dang, I can't not take this call with this person because I don't want to miss out on that. Yep. Right. So you have to do something in that one sentence that makes that person on the receiving end feel that way. Yep. And then this is just sales 101. And I know you know this better than anybody on the planet, but you have to time anchor an ask, which most people don't. Most people are like, hey, are you available for a call? No. Right. Nope. Are you available on Friday morning? I have an opening at 9 a.m. Central. That's time anchoring. And it also gives you a date, which is literally sales 101. Yep. So I think that's also really important. And then your call to action, I have a word that I love to use. This is going to probably get me in trouble, but I use the word synergy a lot, right? So I'll say like, hey, Dale, I would love to jump on a call with you and see if there's some synergy between the two of us. Are you available Friday morning? I have an opening at 9 a.m. Central. That's how a sentence that would close would sound. So if you ever get a message from me and it has the word synergy in it, please I apologize in advance. I just love the word. I think it's a genuine, real word where there isn't synergy. I was just on a call a couple days ago and I was like, I couldn't wait to get off of it. I was like, this person is not for me. Even though I was introduced to him, I was like, I'm out. I have no desire to serve that company. Energetically, there was no synergy. Right. Yeah. So I do think it's a fair word.
I love that word because one of the principles that I teach all the time in sales, especially when you're prospecting, trying to build any kind of new business, whether that's with a consumer, a referral partner, whatever it is you have to create something I call curiosity hooks. And that's where you're saying something. It's kind of that FOMO mindset where you're saying something that makes somebody curious to say, I need to know more about that. Well, when you use the word synergy, the thing I love about that word is that it is a powerful word, but what it does is it creates a curiosity hook in my mind to say, well, what would those synergies be? So it's specific enough to attract me, but general enough for me to wonder, how do you fill in that blank? And the only way I can do that, I've got to take that 9 o'clock call with you on Friday morning to talk about what those synergies might be. So yeah. I love how you're using familiarity to build credibility by utilizing the resources of the people that you know or people you've been in contact with to connect with others. You know, it's interesting when we train loan officers on how to prospect for, let's say, real estate partners, okay, or builders or financial planners or CPAs, whatever it is, whatever the referral network is that they want to build. One of the things that I teach all the time, and I cannot tell you how many loan officers, even 25-year veterans, will look at me and go, nobody else ever taught me that before. I will teach them the most important part of your prospecting is the research before you're prospecting. Amen. It's a time you take to get to know them. So when you open your mouth, you already know things about them that you can plug into that message that they're like, oh, this person knows me. So if they know me, I probably need to know them because egos kick in right away. People love to be told that people know things about them. And when we feel we're known, then we want to be known to the other person too. That's just, God built us that way. So we take advantage of that. I love how you articulate that into that. What does the long term look like as far as sustaining long term relationships? In other words, you've generated some interest with somebody through social media. How are you coaching people to then take that, to turn that into a deeper opportunity, more of a partnership, more of a relationship down the road?
Well, I'll tell you a little behind the scenes curtain here for everybody that gets to listen to this. I created a assignment about 6 months ago, and it has not been released into the world until December 9th. So I don't know what day this is airing, but if it's past December 9th, it is available to the world. And I'm very excited about that. But it is called the Drivers and Levers. And also built into that is called the 90-day projection. So what the Drivers and Levers does is it gives us long-term sustainability so that we can track our effort, right? So it also gives clarity and it gives direction to our prospecting, which most people, I'll tell them, hey, go send one message every day for 365 days and your business will look wildly different next year. That's 100% true. And that is the single daily discipline. But then they'll say, well, how do I track it? Right. Or right. What happens if I take a couple days off? Or how do I know what kind of opportunities do I want? And so I'll share with you a side tangent before I get into the Drivers and Levers specifically. About 8 months ago, I had sort of a revelation, if you will, and I call it God moments in my life. I was on a walk on a Sunday morning. I tend to do long walks Sunday, so I do a long run on Saturday and a really long run on Sunday, and a long walk on Sunday. And I was listening to the Dave Ramsey book, How to Build a Business You Love, on Audible. And I'm walking, listening to this. And one of the things he said was that anybody on your P&L, if they are not making you money, they shouldn't be there, right? Yep. Meaning if they aren't making you fresh money or they aren't helping you maintain revenue, meaning if you were to take them out, you would lose money. So I started soul searching that while listening to him. And then he made a comment about connection or energetic relationships with the people on your team. And, I've always been, I shouldn't say always, but for the last probably decade, I've been a hardcore woman of faith. I got baptized at 26. I was not raised in faith. I was not born with that. I didn't grow up in a home with that. But I was baptized at 26, met my husband in January of 2019. We got married March of 2019 because we were like, God clearly had a plan on all of this. And we've been married almost 7 years now. But so I'm on this walk and I realize not only do I have people on my bus that are not making me money, but I also have people where, like, if I never saw them on a Zoom meeting, I'd be fine. Right. Yep. And that was a problem. And I realized it really quickly. So in that, phone call happens to a gentleman that I'm sure you know well, James Duncan, who is someone I've known for many, many, many years. Yep. And I got on a call with him and I said, I'm so sorry to call you on a Sunday, but it's time. He was like, it's time for what? I was like, it's time, James, for us to work together. And he was like, okay. So the next morning we get on Zoom and we'd been kind of laughingly talking about this for years, right? Of like, hey, we should be partners, blah, blah, blah. And fun fact is we're both women, he's obviously a man of faith. I'm a woman of faith. So I had told him, I said, you pray about it today. You go to church, you pray about it. I'm going to do the same thing and we'll talk tomorrow. We ended up on Zoom for like 2 hours Monday morning. And I fired an individual that was in that role, didn't need her, got rid of, energetically wasn't matching. I bring James in, and then James and I make an executive decision to hire a new executive assistant for me. So we do that. Now, I had no idea that this woman, I had over 2,000 applications to be my executive assistant. Like, it was insanity trying to filter through all of the applications that had come through. We had a short list, which I didn't even make the short list. Another woman on my team made the short list. So I had 5 names. All 5 of those women went through their first round interview. Then there were 3, and then the final 2 got to meet with me. So mind you, I didn't choose the initial list of 5. I didn't choose the list of 3. All my choice was between the final 2 who was going to be on my team. And the woman who is now in my executive assistant role is not only a woman of faith, but this woman is a freaking animal. Like, she is a driver beyond all belief. So that's where the word driver actually came from, because I had this idea with Heather, and I said, Heather, I'm so good at prospecting and I do it every day and I know I'm good at it, but I don't track it. Right. So when we started designing the drivers and levers assignment, it was rooted in, I do this every day anyway, but let's give ourselves a little bit more direction so that if I say, hey, Heather, what does my 90-day projection look like? How many webinars do I have in December? How many webinars do I have in January? How many speaking gigs do I have in December? How many do I have in January? So on and so forth. We can look at that math and say, hey, one of these buckets or one of these categories is a little light, right? Which we do. On the first of every month, I get the next 90 days from her. And if one of the categories is light, she's like, let's go get it. So it gives me strategic focus for where to go prospect because I know what my 3 drivers are, right? The 3 things that I must do on a monthly basis to drive inbound opportunity, not leads. I want to clarify. Not to drive leads. I'm talking about driving the opportunities that I need to be able to create leads, right? So what are those 3 drivers? What do they look like for me? Mine are probably quite similar to yours, Dale, I would imagine, but a loan officer is going to look a little different. A real estate professional is going to look a little different. Somebody in C-suite executive, leadership that maybe they're recruiting, that's going to look a little different. So what the drivers and levers document does is it gives you 3 sort of buckets. Really 4, but 3 main ones. Number 1 is what are the drivers in your business? What are the things that you must do on a monthly basis to drive inbound opportunity? You have to write them down. My 3 podcast, webinars, and in-person speaking. Those are the 3 things that I must do on a monthly basis. Then we have to tie a number to it. How many of those? Second thing is the levers, right? So now we know what our drivers are. Now we have to identify the levers in our life. I have about a dozen that I would say I consistently can use every day. Why? Because those people are people I've truly, genuinely maintained and built a significant relationship over the last several years, right? Which means that a lever is somebody I could name drop, right? So if I name drop Dale, I better have a relationship with Dale because if somebody that is getting that message says to Dale, hey, do you know who this Michelle chick is? You'd be like, no, right? So I could very easily burn my bridge, right? Which we don't want to do. So you have to identify who your levers are. And then in this document, this homework assignment, you're actually going to identify the lever and then you're going to choose 3 people that you don't know that you can use that lever to get to. That's pretty simple. That gives you 15 people tomorrow that you could go message and hopefully get some good at-bats and get some yeses. Now, the homework assignment attached to this is a 30-day challenge where you send 1 message every day for 30 days. That's it. I'm not asking you to do it for 365 like I would normally. I'm asking you to do it for 30 because what I want you to do is identify the levers you used over the course of those 30 days. So which levers did you use the most? Which levers did you use the least? And what was your batting average with each of those? Because ultimately that will tell you, hey, this is a lever that I need to continue to use, or this is a lever that I probably shouldn't use because doesn't seem to be working. And so this assignment not only changed my life career-wise, but it has changed every loan officer, every real estate agent. I have a couple of executive recruiters that are in the recruiting industry, not for mortgage, but just recruiters as headhunters, I guess you could say, that I'm working with now, who have struggled in the prospecting world because social is so different than what it was even just a few years ago. So anybody in sales, any entrepreneurs, anybody that's trying to create an opportunity through social or with social as a vehicle needs to do this. And I'll share a really fun stat and then I'll stop talking on this piece. But, I've been in business 11 years and I've been an entrepreneur all 11 years, never worked for a corporation, never been, W-2'd. It's always been Michelle's entity. And I, over the course of the last 10 years, have never started the month in the green ever. As an entrepreneur, we wake up on the first of the month and you're like, oh, okay, I got to go find XYZ amount of money this month. That's right. Like, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And in October of this year, so just a few months ago, it was the first month in my entire career that I've ever started the month in the green before the month even started. And I truly 1000% believe that was a God thing. That was a Heather got put in my life. We built this drivers and levers document. And now going into maternity leave in April and May, I'm not worried about the P&L because the P&L is going to take care of itself because I've done my job over the last several. several months, right? And years,
I
frankly.
love it.
So sorry for the long-winded answer, but it felt
No,
the context was important.
I love the context. I love that you shared how your faith is really impacting that. We'll talk about that a little bit more at the end. I'd love to unpack that just a little bit more, but
Sure.
and I just love the intentionality of everything you just said there. Like, this is what's missing so much in today's marketplace and business world is people are reactive and not proactive. They're
Yes.
not intentional and deliberate. They just respond to everything out there. And I meet people every day that their number one goal, their number one driver for the day is catch up on my email. I'm like, are you kidding me? If that's all you care about, you might as well just get in another business right now because you're not going to make it self-employed and you're certainly not going to make it in this industry. There are very clear drivers and levers that you have to have. And for a mortgage professional, those are easy. You better be prospecting for partners. You
Yep.
better be making your calls to your customers, and you better be pounding your database for both repeat and referral business. Those are the three levers that everybody should be pushing. And if they're doing those three things on a consistent, regular, daily basis, I love how you talked about, I want you to do this every day. The biggest mistake that I have noted in my 42-year career with managers and loan officers alike is they always focus on the month end result. They focus on how many loans am I going to close at the end of the month. It's like, that's the wrong focus. You got to focus on what are the actions and activities you're going to do every day in those 21 business days that make up a month that you can be sure those numbers will be there when you get there. You're not targeting something out there. You're saying, no, I'm going to do today what it's going to take to ensure it'll be there when I show up 21 days
Yep.
from now. And that's exactly what you just did. I think that is a brilliant business plan. I love what you've created. By the way, we'll release this on whatever date you tell us you want to, so it'll correspond to your program, so people can
Yeah.
get those two together. However, we can help you with that. We're glad to do it. The bottom line is you've just hit a very important point for everybody watching this, and that is you got to identify your drivers, which is your priorities, and then your
Mhm.
levers, which is the way you're going to approach that, your strategy. I love that mindset, and I love how you articulate it. That's really cool.
It's just so simple. It really is so simple. And I think, instead of starting the month every month in the red, which is emotionally and financially stressful on anyone, right? Instead, what you described is let's create a steady pipeline that's
Yep.
grounded in a sense of identity, meaning I know what I need to do. I
Yep.
know me, Michelle, I know what I need to do, which then in turn breeds confidence because confidence doesn't come from anything other than action. Right.
Yep.
I always talk about motivation. The keynote that I just recently did was on motivation comes from movement was the title because I think a lot of people think that motivation is just this like lightning bolt that's going to hit you one morning and
No.
you're going to wake up and
No.
be like, oh, right there it is. The reality is that motivation comes from and confidence comes from moving, doing it. Right.
Right.
So back in 2019, I launch and fail. Okay. Well, something has to change. Right. So I have to take the failure and I have to create give myself some sort of feedback. What did I do that wasn't working? What do I need to do? And then I need to move. I need to do it. Right. Okay. So now I'm doing it. And now as I'm doing it, I start to pay attention to the little things that are working, the things that aren't working, messaging that I'm saying, or maybe something I'm saying on a call that doesn't feel like it's landing right. Okay. That's feedback, right? I'm going to take it
Yep.
and I'm going to adjust. And then ultimately I say, in the long run, people say, Michelle, you're just so confident. And I'm like, well, I'm confident because it's lived experience. I've done it and I'm doing it. And I am exactly who I say I am. Because if I tell you to go do a 30-day challenge, I'm going to go do the 30-day challenge.
Yep.
And I think the best example was last year, November of 2024. And I talk about this a lot in the book, actually. I had the second worst event in my life. I would say the worst for me personally, but as a life overall in my 35 years of life, it was my worst. But second, I have two main ones. Number one, my dad had stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in 2014. That he was given 6 months to live, and the City of Hope in Southern California saved my dad's life, and he's 11, almost 12 years in remission.
Wow.
That was one,
Praise
but
God. That's
praise
great.
God for that, truly. And I, I hope my dad listens to this someday, and I hope he realizes how powerful God is, truly, because my parents are not people of faith these days, and I really hope that they find that, we'll say.
Yep.
And the second one was in November of 2024. My husband and I miscarried our second baby, and
So sorry.
I miscarried at home. I'll say I'm going to do my best not to cry, because I can say it without crying now, but I couldn't a few months ago. And I think part of it is because I'm now pregnant. But I miscarried at home, and I don't know any husband or wife that has ever been through that doesn't feel the weight of the world on them in those moments. And I remember sitting in my bathroom, literally miscarrying our child, and my husband just walks in and he's like, what can I do for you? Like, how can I help you? How can I be here for you? And I said, just the fact that I'm home and I'm not in a hospital room by myself. I'm not in a cold, sterile, like, environment without any things of comfort. That's all I wanted. But in that moment, I had this revelation, and I'll say this super candidly because I think it matters. I had a revelation of, like, I teach everybody else to go do these things all the time, right? Like, I'm telling people to go do this, but I had gotten so consistently good at generating business that I myself also wasn't doing it anymore. Like, I'm just being transparent, right? Because I would look at my calendar and I'd look at the P&L and be like, well, the P&L is great. So I'd kind of take my foot off the gas. And how relevant is that to everybody listening? We've all done it in our life personally. We've all done it in our businesses professionally. So this is happening to me, and I had a massive God moment. And I looked at my husband and I said, I want to retire you from the military. I want you to be home full time. And he wanted that too. But when you take away a salary from a family, that's hard, right? So we had to make a decision of, can we do this? And our goal was to retire him by the end of 2025. I ended up retiring him May 1st of this year, which was a absolute total godsend.
Awesome.
But what happened was I sat on my toilet in my bathroom miscarrying and had this God moment and said, you know what? Instead of me just telling everybody to do this, I'm actually going to go back and I'm going to start doing it again. And what does that sound like, Dale? Doesn't that sound like origination these days? Right? Like, how many people have had to go back into origination because of the state of the environment of the mortgage space, right? And real estate, even for that matter, where you got to go back into production and you have to prove to your team and to your crew that you can do exactly what you are wanting them to do. And I truly believe that was the most pivotal moment in my entire career, because I could have just kept riding the coattails of the several years of hard work that I had done. And I'm not going to lie, we were doing great, right? But when you look at that and you say, you know what, I might be doing great, but I have to be doing stellar because I want my husband to be home for if and when we have another baby, I had to go into stellar mode, right? And being able to retire my husband in May was the absolute biggest blessing of my entire life, because knowing, not only marrying him, but knowing that we're about to welcome our second baby into our home, and my husband doesn't have to go to work at 5 a.m. anymore, and he doesn't get home at 4 p.m. anymore. He's home all day with me. He works full time from home. I work full time from home. We will raise our children together. And that is so important to me. But I think it genuinely is a testament to do what you say you want other people to do. And if you're listening to this and you're like, well, I'm not in origination and I don't need to be, you're right. You don't need to be, likely, but some of you might need to be, and some of you might be in origination again and not doing the same things that Dale or I are saying. And I think that's the point is, if you want something, the only person standing between you and the thing is you. And it doesn't matter how good you're doing, right? Because you could be doing amazing and there's always room to finesse or become more efficient. It's a choice.
Now there's a massively quotable quote right there. If you're if you're looking to do something, the only one standing between you and the something is you. It's exactly right. I love that. I'm so sorry you guys went through that, by the way. But I'm so happy for you guys that you're pregnant and you're expecting your second child. And thank you to your husband for his service. We're grateful for that. And that's really cool that he gets a chance to be retired out of that. And you guys are doing stuff together. And it's awesome. Praise God.
God
That's
is
all I
good.
say. That's good
God is
stuff.
good.
That's good stuff.
Yeah,
You made my day with that story. I appreciate that so much.
good.
So a couple things you said there that I want to mention that kind of triggered thoughts of things that I've taught for years. One of the things that you really talked about there was leading by example. That
Mm.
everything you just said there was leadership by example. And in the tens of thousands of leaders that I've trained over the decades that I've done this, the constant statement that I use with managers is, you've all heard the old saying, do as I say, not as I do. Well, here's a leadership saying, do as I do and not as I say. That's what good leaders do, is they don't tell people what to do. They show people how to do it by
Mm.
doing it themselves and getting them to follow. That's why you're called a leader, because you're creating followers in that process. And what you just exemplified of what you said was just great leadership trait. And leadership is not for just managers. It's for all of us. Everybody needs to take a leadership role in your life and take control of the things you can take control of and create your own destiny. Quit complaining about all the problems out there, but focus on how to fix it. And the answer is you. The answer is step up and do the daily things that you know you need to do to be successful. The number one question that I probably get from managers all the time is, how do I better motivate my people? And I know when they ask me that question, I know what they're looking for. They're looking for me to tell them about a great video or a book they should read or some kind of a thing they should do in their office to get people pumped up. And I look them dead in the eye and go, let me explain something to you. Anything that you do externally to motivate people is temporary. There's no permanency to it. You're going to have to keep doing that for the rest of your life to keep them pumped up, and it ain't going to work anyway. The ultimate motivator is success. You want to motivate your people? Show them how to succeed and then force them to do it. Get them to do the things that will make them successful until it becomes their habit. And now they're doing it on their own. And now you can make them self-sufficient when you do that. The message you just gave was a great message that we've got to learn to be self-sufficient. We've got to identify those drivers, identify those levers. And then most importantly, once we do it, don't sit and look at them. Now take some action. Step up. As a very dear friend of mine once said, I'll never forget this as long as I said, he said, hey, Dale, if you're going to pray for rain, stand there with a hoe in your hand. I always thought that was a great quote. I'm like, that's a great saying. You're right. We got to, if we're going to expect God to deliver, then we got to show up when that happens and we got to do the work. And that's the key to the game at the end of the day. 100%. So let me ask you this question. You've mentioned your faith many times. How does that drive you as a leader, and how does that impact how you work and just how you view what you do every day?
I'll tell you, the biggest, most important word around my faith as of late is the word surrender. Fully, wholeheartedly surrender.
Great.
And having a fertility battle or battling infertility for us was the biggest form of surrender we could ever have in our stage of life for my husband and I, because it was one of those things where we're like, are we going to let this impact our marriage? I didn't want it to. He didn't want it to. And were we going to let it impact how we treated Knox, who is here and is incredible and such a fun little boy to have around all the time? Like, I am immediately sad the moment he walks out the door because he's just so much fun.
I love his name. I love that name.
Knox, yeah. He's such a loving little boy. And I just kept saying to my husband, I was like, this is so hard already as a woman to feel like I can't create a child. The last thing we need to do is like add a layer to that, right?
Yeah.
So full surrender of our life to God wholeheartedly. But the biggest one for me with my faith is when it comes to speaking. And, as for you being a speaker, you know this all too well. We go behind stage, and I don't care if you've been speaking for a day or for a decade. It's scary when you're standing behind stage and you're about to go out. And I think the biggest thing that makes me the most nervous every time is I want to deliver a message, and I feel like I have this impact that is like screaming to get out of me. And I have this raging fear of every time I go on stage, like, don't mess it up, right? Don't forget to say something. Come on, we can do this. Like, we have to get this message out. And I'll never forget, you might know him, Kirk Faulkner, a great friend of mine and part of the Knowledge Cube crew formerly, but he texted me before an event, and he didn't even realize that he was doing this probably, but I was literally 5 minutes from going on stage, had the mic on, like had my notes in front of me behind stage, trying to drink water, putting chapstick on, right? I'm like, okay, I got to go do this. And I get this text message from him, and he quotes a Bible verse, and he says, and I'm paraphrasing, but essentially that God will only give me the words that I need to give to this room at the time that I am meant to give them.
Yep.
And what I've come to realize in my faith journey is that God always shows up. He's always on time, and he only gives me the messaging that is necessary at the time that it is needed. Meaning, I'm not going to say something I shouldn't say on a call because God didn't give me the words to say. Right. And I'll never forget the first keynote I did where I studied my butt off, Dale. Like, when I tell you I was up the day before and the morning of the event, I'm like pacing in my hotel room. I am like memorizing this whole thing. And I go on stage, and I in my mind, I am so mad at myself because I was like, crap, I forgot to say this. I forgot to say that. I forgot to say this. And as speakers, we do that. We get off stage and we're like, oh, I had all these things and I forgot to say them. And I got probably 50 DMs, and a woman who I absolutely love, she comes up to me afterwards and she's like, Michelle, the whole room did not take their eyes off of you for that entire 45 minutes.
Awesome.
And I was like, but I forgot all those things. I forgot all this stuff. She's like, Michelle, the only person that knows that you forgot any of those things are you. And I was just immediately in that moment, I was like, you know what? God only gives you the things that you're supposed to say when you're supposed to say it to make the impact that you're meant to make at that particular time. And it's just been such a powerful reminder to me, not just personally, but professionally, right? Fully surrender, let it all go, and God will never be late.
Yep.
Ever.
Prayer is powerful. When you surrender through prayer and just ask for the guidance. I'd have never made it 30 years as a speaker if that hadn't been the case, because I've been tried up 30 years ago. It's amazing how that works. And just so you know, you've got the it factor. You're going to be fine. You're going to be on a lot of stages the rest of your life. I guarantee it. And they're all going to work out fine. And don't worry about the stuff that you didn't say because nobody knew you were supposed to say it anyway. So that's all there is to it. Keep reminding yourself of that.
We're our own worst critic, right? Like, we're the ones that
exactly right.
Process and say, oh, I was supposed to say that, or oh no, they're not going to get the message because I forgot that one sentence.
You're exactly right. All right, let me before I close with my final question, let me just pop in one more thing on the social media side, because this is something that drives me nuts, and I'm just really curious to get your thought on this. As I work with loan officers across the nation, one of the things that I find a lot is I will find these loan officers who are so focused on two things. What is the content that I've got to provide? Yeah. And then this whole video thing. I'll ask them questions like, how long do you did a video? I saw a video you had for 2.5 minutes long. How long did you spend on that? How many cuts did you do on that? I'm like, oh, I probably did 32 cuts. Probably was 3 hours. Like, okay, you spent 3 hours for a 2.5 minute video that got 3 likes. Help me understand how that was the right use of your time. That is not how you build social media. Look, stop on it trying to be an influencer. I see it all the time. Loan officers that are, well, this person was an influencer. Well, they happen to get lucky probably. You're probably not going to be. That's not how you build a business plan. It's consistency, it's repetition, it's relationship, it's conversation, it's connection, it's all of those things. Talk a little bit about this whole content dive. Got to be video, got to be interesting, got to have some shtick. I think that's what's going to get me there. Talk about that and how that can lead to the wrong direction, and how really having well thought out, relational, conversational, communicative, social media presence can make a difference.
I might ruffle so many feathers by saying this, aside from yours, because we're going to be aligned on this one. But I'll say it this way. Silence, not sales, is the outcome of indifference. That is the most quoted saying I've ever said. And I'm saying it again because it's so relevant to what you just asked. But silence, not sales, is the outcome of indifference. And what is indifference? Again, this is the Michelle Berman-Mikel definition. But what indifference means to me when it comes to social is I don't care enough to say yes, and I don't care enough to say no. Therefore, I don't do anything. Right. So if your social strategy is so-and-so did a video on this and he seems to be successful, I'm going to go do that. That is a problem. Yep. The other problem I'll say is if everything that comes out of your mouth is mortgage related, big issue.
It's over.
Mortgage talking head, please no more. Right? How many videos, Dale, did you see on the 50-year mortgage the morning of all of that shenanigans?
Oh my gosh, yep.
Hundreds of them. Right? So that is an issue in my mind. And I have so many thoughts around that. But silence being the lack of engagement, right? People are like, I'm not getting any comments. I'm not getting any DMs. Nobody's messaging me. You are reactively approaching the social platform and you live on a hamster wheel of content creation. And then you're wondering why you're sick and tired of spending time, energy, and money on something that's not working. Yep. Right. So another thing I love to say is burnout isn't doing too much. Burnout is doing too much of the wrong thing and not adjusting to the feedback that the world is giving you. Right. So if you're listening to this and you're saying, I have a $2,500 a month videographer. I have a content day every month. I do a branding photo shoot all the time. I do all of the stuff. Why isn't it working? Maybe you should stop doing those things and instead pull out your phone. And I call them God moments. That's one of the 4 pillars that I teach. The other one of the 4 is my favorite. And I coined it back in 2019, trademarked it, which was a whole freaking thing. But it's called Value Series. Value Series is where you combine a passion with a pain point. So who are you outside of work? What do you enjoy doing? And you combine that passion with a pain point being of your ideal client, not of you, right? So if you're a loan officer saying, my ideal client is X, Y, or Z, what are their pain points? Great example is don't just say DTI, say what about it, right? There are so many different kinds of conversations around DTI. You got a single mom that's getting child support. Her DTI looks different. Then you got a husband and wife that want to buy a second home in the Smoky Mountains to retire in someday and eventually have this current primary residence paid off so we can move into that one. Yep. Different conversation around DTI, right? So pain points need to be very articulated and very specific, not general, right? So you take a passion, you take a pain point. We have this beautiful thing now called ChatGPT that does analogy building for us, right? So you ask it, you say, hey, ChatGPT, can you build an analogy between someone's love of baseball or being better yet, being a baseball dad or a baseball coach for my son's T-ball team and a mortgage professional whose ideal client's pain point is explain. And then you end it by saying, we are going to make a 5-part series out of this. So what does ChatGPT do? It gives you part 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You now have 5 videos. Yep. All 5 of those videos need to be recorded. This is the most important thing I'm about to say. Your videos for Value Series need to be recorded in the element of the passion. So if you are talking about being a baseball coach for your son's T-ball team, go to the baseball field and be in the element of that. Why? Nice. 2 things. Number 1, it makes you so much more confident in the delivery of your message because physiologically you feel safe, right? This is Psychology 101. I am a little bit of a psychology nerd. I'll save that for another episode. But when you think about physiologically, how do we feel when we are in a safe place? Like talk about fight or flight, right? When we feel the flight reaction, why? When we feel the fight reaction, why? Right? Ask yourselves how you feel in those moments and you should be able to answer my question. But with Value Series specifically, my clients come to me and they say, Michelle, like I'm petrified of doing video. Or I have the other side, which is the person we're talking about of I've done this so long and nothing's working. Okay, well, I go to their social and every single video, they are in their office, they're in a green room, or they're sitting at their desk with their phone stuffed in their face and it's awkward.
Yep.
And it's not that what they're saying is invaluable, is that they themselves physically look uncomfortable, right? Yep. So if you put somebody in the element of something that makes them feel safe, the consumer of the content, we believe you more, right? Yep. I'm more likely to listen to you. Yep. Just fact, right? And then on the flip side of it, you are now more likely to want to continue to do it, which creates that consistency factor that is such an issue for so many people. And then the last thing I'll say about the content piece is your content is the foundation of how you prospect. So if you don't talk about things like your personal life in your content, prospecting is going to get real difficult. Because the first thing you should say on a call when you pick up the phone to call a realtor, or the first thing you and I do when we get on a Zoom meeting, I'm not going straight to work. Dale, how was Thanksgiving?
Yeah.
Hey,
right.
were you guys able to squeeze some workouts in between eating all your food? Right? Like, those are the things that I'm bringing up because I know that they matter to you.
Yep.
Right? Now, how do I know that? Because I consume your social and I pay attention to that. Right? But the key is that my content is the foundation of my effort, my prospecting effort. So if you, Dale, were to go to my social and didn't see a single thing about running, didn't see a single thing about any form of fitness or Knox or my hardcore diehard love of coffee, whatever it is, you'd be like, who is this person?
Yeah.
Right? Because she doesn't reflect what her message says she isn't reflected in her content. So I am very half-ass backwards, I'll say it that way, when it comes to content production, because I produce content based off the conversations I have that I earn. Right? So this podcast has just this hour we've been together. I have like 5 ideas for videos that I can go record right now based off of this exact conversation.
I love
that then creates and feeds the content. Now that matters, right? Because people are going to listen to it and it's more believable. So I think your personal life has to be part of your game. And obviously there's boundaries and there's lines that people feel safe and don't feel safe talking about or comfortable talking about. My favorite one was a gentleman that said he was like a really avid hunter. And I was like, I mean, I love it. I love meat too. Right. And he was like, but do I post like the dead animal on Instagram? And I said, this person's gentleman, we'll just leave him nameless. But I said to him, it's up to you, right? Like, where's your gray line? What makes you feel comfortable or versus not? Like, if it were me, I probably wouldn't post a dead animal, but I certainly wouldn't be afraid of posting, me outside of my truck in my camo, getting ready to go.
Yeah.
Right. So I think you just find your balance of what makes you feel comfortable versus not. And, I love talking about Knox publicly. I've never been afraid to I'm not going to put his school online, obviously, but my favorite thing when I walk into a room and I meet someone that I don't know, they say, oh my gosh, Michelle, Knox is so cute. We loved his T-ball video. And I don't even know who this person is. I don't even know their name. I'm looking at their name tag, like, who are you? Right? But that just means that I've earned their eyeballs and that they actually pay attention so that silence is not an issue for me, right? I'm not creating that aspect of it.
I love that. Well, and the other side of that is that tells you that the person you just came in contact with is like-minded with you. That's going to be your best partners. That's going to be your best prospects. That's going to be your best relationship. So it works in 2 ways. It's so interesting because as you were talking through all that, it just took me back years ago. For a couple of years, we did this series called the Daily Minute, Dale E-Minute. So it was 1 minute where I do a message on one topic. Could be a motivational, could be a strategy. And we did them mostly from the office, mostly in studio, but I happened to be on a trip with my wife for 30 days in the south of France. And we went to Paris, we went to the south of France, we're on vacation together, and I did them every day from France. And everybody started emailing me and go, those are the greatest ones ever, because I was in the moment, in the environment of what I was talking about. It just made it so much more relevant to people. So your point is well taken. All right.
Yeah.
Let me ask you the last question and we'll wrap this up. This is just, by the way, this has been a blast. I have really appreciated having you here and enjoyed this conversation. You're a delight to have around. Appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule for Batting 1,000. I end every one of these sessions with the same question. And it's this. I have always said that one of the key things that every one of us needs in our life is a great mentor. And I'm curious for you, being an athlete, growing up in your life, I know that you have had mentors. Share with the audience, if you would, who was your greatest mentor? Why were they your greatest mentor? And why is it important from your perspective that we lean into the wisdom, the knowledge, the encouragement of other people who have done things before we've done them?
Well, I love this question, and I have 2. And I will say I have the personal side and then I have the professional side. And the personal side was my former coach. His name is Kevin Perry. He passed away the year I graduated high school to go into college. from stage 4 prostate cancer.
Oh.
He is just, he was one of the Olympic coaches for the swim team many, many, many times over the course of his career. Very, very decorated coach, but he was not warm and fuzzy. He was not your like, Michelle, I'm just so proud of you. Like, no, not his phrasing, not his terminology. And, many of practices I can remember showing up and, the tarps on the pool deck that we use for winter would be like in the pool, like not in a good way, but like had been thrown in the pool, or somebody was late to something, or we used to do these really crazy, we called them underwater 75s, where it was 3 laps underwater and the only breath you got was at the wall, right, to do an open turn. And it was just brutal. And at the beginning of every season, we would start with doing it with fins. And then as we got throughout the season, it got harder and harder. And we had to use no fins, and it just became even more hard. Right. But my senior year of high school, all of us are getting ready to get recruited. My senior class included Tyler Clary, who is a gold medalist in the Olympics in the 200 backstroke. And I swam in this gentleman's lane for 10 years. But it was our senior year. We're all, going off to college recruiting trips. And I remember talking to Kevin, and one of the things he said to me, I think has stayed with me forever. And ultimately it comes down to a very singular question that my dad said to me many, many times over the course of my, 20 plus year swimming career too, which is, was that the best that you could do today? And I hated that question when it came from my dad, but coming from Kevin, it hit different. Because it was, that guy doesn't care how I feel today. He just cares that I showed up to be a reflection of the best version of me and of the best version of, or a reflection of him, right? Of his team, that you had to like literally apply to be on his swim team. Like, I mean, it was not easy to be a part of this crew, but my dad's messaging was the same, right? Which was that the best you could do today? Right? No matter what the outcome of the race was, whether I got first, whether I got last, whatever it was that the best that I could do today? And when I look at those two gentlemen in my life and I foreshadow it to where I am now, right? Or kind of move forward into today's part of my life, I mean, my husband and I had COVID. I had the flu for 8 days, and, you go through those and you're like, man, nobody would have been surprised if I was not operating at full capacity. But I still had that same question in my mind, even on the days where I am dying sick in bed. I still asked myself that question. And I said, was that the best that I could do today? And I talk about it a lot in the book, actually, which is, even if I'm only 60% capacity today, did I give 100% of that 60%?
Love it.
And I think that is a very different way of looking at life, because I think a lot of, even with the miscarriage last year, I don't think anybody would have been surprised if I said, hey, I'm out. I'm going to go get a nice, cushy corporate job somewhere, because there's lots of CMO jobs that somebody would want me, right? Nobody would have been surprised. But instead, what did I do? I doubled down and said, no, I'm going to go show to myself and to my family that I can retire my husband and I can do it early. So I think the idea there is, mentorship for me was not so much like a book. It was a message that was given to me over a long period of time in a pool, right? For 20 years. And, I grew up swimming without headphones underwater. We didn't have underwater speakers, like all that cool stuff that happens now. Like, we didn't have any of that. Right. So, which meant that it was just me and my thoughts. And I think that really plays a part into who I am and how I operate today, and professionally today. I would say one of the biggest and most impactful people in my life is Cindy Ertman. The morning after my miscarriage, she was my first phone call, and, she obviously knew everything that had been going on. And Cindy was the one that called me and asked me to just put my big girl pants on and get back to being who the world needed, which was the Michelle Berman-Mikel that she knew. And I didn't want to. I didn't want to do the dishes. I didn't want to do the laundry. I didn't even want to live, Dale, if I'm being honest, right? And this woman believed in me so much, and still does. She called me and said, Michelle, you got to get back to being who Michelle Berman-Mikel is and who the world needs. Single-handedly the most influential phone call of my professional career. And, I love that woman to death.
Cindy Ertman is an absolute icon in our industry
Yeah.
and an incredible human being. I've just, believe it or not, her and I met for the first time, like in the last year, even though we've both been on
Wow.
stages all over the country for, for decades.
Oh my
But
God.
we just never crossed paths. And we finally got a chance to meet, and what a delightful individual she is. And,
Oh, she's the
uh,
best.
I think you just triggered me for who the next guest is I want to have on the show. That would be Cindy
Call her.
Ertman for
I love
sure.
it.
So I'm going to be reaching out to her to ask her. So
I
that's
love
good. Well, again, I want to say this has been a delight. You have dropped so many great just pieces of information and knowledge and wisdom, and love hearing your story, and really appreciate you being here. Again, I want to tell everybody, get the Black Line. Now, where do they reach? Where do they connect with you? How do they get to your book? How do they sign up for your programs? Tell people how they can be part of what you're doing.
Yeah, well, the Black Line is on Amazon. It's the easiest and fastest way. You guys were special and got signed copies, but if you want to buy it, you have to buy it through Amazon now.
Okay.
Super easy. Just type in the Black Line and type in Michelle Berman-Mikel. It should pop right up. I have lots of speaking next year, so if you buy a book on Amazon and you see me speaking somewhere, come bring it to me. I promise I'll sign it. But that's the easiest way. Social. Berman Media Social, Berman Media Social on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. It's all the same. Michelle Berman-Mikel, if you want to type my name out. But honestly, as far as programs and all of that's concerned, my website and social, just send me a message and say, hey, Michelle, I heard you on Dale's show and I'd love to meet with you and chat, and I'll send you my calendar link. But I will say that that's my favorite thing to tell people at the end of podcasts is, if you heard me on here with Dale, please tell me you did, because then I get to go tell Dale that, and it makes Dale feel good, and Dale deserves to feel good and know that he's making an impact. So that's my favorite thing. So just send me a message. I answer all my own messages. I do all my own responding. There is no AI chat bots in my social.
Yep, same with me. I'm glad to hear that. Well, Michelle, thank you so much. What a delight to have you here. Thanks for all your great wisdom and information. This wraps up another Batting 1,000, guys, where we hang out with the heavy hitters, and today was no exception. This has been a great time for you. I hope you guys learned a lot, and we will see you on the next one. God bless. Have a great rest of your month.